as I work with people putting out boundaries and holding them is that they get promotions, they leave jobs and get better ones, they save their relationships in different ways in their personal lives. I mean, your life will become exponentially better once you learn to have them and to hold them. It's truly the answer to a lot of what you've been looking for. It's a huge issue, this people-pleasing, wanting others to like us, and thinking that being nice means not having boundaries, and that it's mean to have boundaries. And that's the big lie, that wrong, faulty belief, faulty logic that people are working from. And we have to shift that.
That's Abby Medcalf. She's a psychologist, author, and speaker with over 35 years of experience helping others create connection, ease, and joy in their relationships. For the last 15 years, her focus has been on boundaries, and she's going to enlighten us. Specifically, you'll learn 1, what most people get wrong about boundaries, 2, how to stop others from hijacking your mood, and 3, a trick for dealing with people who are nasty to you. I'm Pete Makaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Abby. Abby, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to hear some insight on boundaries. Could you kick us off with a particularly surprising, shocking, stunning discovery you've made about boundaries that really dazzles people? No pressure, Abby.
No pressure at all. I would say this, that most people think they're setting boundaries and they're not. I think we throw that word around a lot. So I'll hear things like, well, I told the person I didn't like what they were doing and they needed to stop. That's not a boundary. Or I told them that I feel really uncomfortable when you talk to me that way. I said that to this person and they kept saying whatever they were saying. It's not a boundary to tell someone how you feel. It's not a boundary to tell someone that you don't like what they're doing. That's not a boundary. So that's what you're doing wrong probably first.
Okay, right from the get-go. So
yeah,
you're expressing something like, hey, I don't like that. I would like for it to be different. So then what is a boundary and how does that sound?
So the boundary would be, hey, I don't like how you're talking to me. You're going to need to stop. And then you have to have what I call teeth or a response if the boundary's not kept. So not a consequence. You're not punishing anyone. You are just letting them know what will happen. And there has to be something that happens and you have to do it. Or I will leave the meeting, or I will hang up, or I will block you. I hope it's not blocked. I don't like people taking very drastic measures, but you want to do something, you have to be clear that this is what I'm going to do, period. So like I'll have someone who says, well, I've told people not to email me that my day ends at 7. I've been very clear and they keep doing it. And it's like, well, don't answer the email then. Like you need to. It's not anyone else's job to hold your boundary. It is your job. And most people get angry that other people aren't holding their boundary, but they themselves aren't holding their boundary. So how are you angry at other people when you're not even doing it? So it needs to be on you. You're not a victim. I get a lot of victim talk, which is not my favorite. And I talk a lot about that on my own podcast and in my last book. Like, you're not a victim in life. You really need to stand up. You need to say what you're going to do, and then you need to do it. I also say never repeat a boundary. Once you've said your boundary, you just have to do whatever it is at that point.
Okay. Well, we're in the thick of it right away.
I'm jumping right in.
I love it. Thank you. Well, could you tell us then, I guess I'm curious, boundaries, they sound handy. So you gave us a bit of a definition. Is that your official textbook line?
Yeah, there's a few lines. Really, to understand boundaries, you have to understand that nobody is responsible for how you feel, what you say, or what you do, and that you are not responsible for what anyone else says or does or thinks. And once you get that, because I think the thing I get asked the most is, well, how do I talk to my boss so they don't get upset? Or how do I talk to a coworker so that they don't get mad at me? And you can't. There is no answer to that. There is no perfect way. You could say the most perfect thing in the most perfect way. We've all done it, right? You've done it. I've done it. We've trained ourselves and gone in with all the good tools. And then the person still gets upset. It's because it's about them, not you. And so you have to get rid of that. All you can do is focus on having integrity in the way you speak. I call it speaking from love, not fear. Like, from the compassion part of your brain. And that's what boundaries really are. I always say boundaries are love, walls are fear. Boundaries are meant to keep people in. They're meant to keep our relationships moving. Walls are meant to keep people out. And that's the big difference.
Okay, thank you. Well, so we're going to dig into a lot of the how-to and the nuances and the verbiage of how this is done. But maybe could you paint a picture for us, perhaps an inspiring story or some data that give us a clue as to just how important, useful, transformative, delightful can boundaries be?
And I've been doing this 40 years and I work in organizations and I work with executives and I work with regular people just in their lives. So whether this is at work or home or anywhere, if you feel at all resentful in your life or helpless or hopeless, you don't have boundaries where you should, and you're not holding them. So if you want to have peace of mind, boundaries are the answer to feel more peaceful in your life, to have more connection, to have more love in your life, to have more efficacy, to feel more productive. You know how much more productive you are when you have boundaries? It's unbelievable. When you hold the boundaries, what happens is your self-esteem is absolutely raised because you are having greater self-efficacy. You are doing what you say. And in my experience, as I work with people putting out boundaries and holding them, is that they get promotions, they leave jobs and get better ones. They save their relationships in different ways in their personal lives. I mean, your life will become exponentially better once you learn to have them and to hold them. It's truly the answer to a lot of what you've been looking for.
Exponentially better. The answer. I like it. Can you give us perhaps a particular story?
A very simple one is when you decide what your communication strategy will be at work. I think that's the place that people get the most out of whack. We know from the research that people are working about 50 minutes longer. We know that the days are stretched. And we know this from emails and when people are answering things and all kinds of different data. But basically, you're having a longer day. And that's a problem. There's a lot of wonderful things about remote work and how we're doing things now that I love, like people can see a coach or a therapist in the middle of the day, things that you normally couldn't have done before. There's a lot of positive things, but the negative things are that folks don't always know when to say that's enough. So one of the simplest things you can do is announce how people can contact you. If you call me on my phone and you got my voicemail, it says, don't leave a message. It says, I don't listen here. If you want to get me more directly, you have to email me, and it gives my email. So right there, that's a boundary. That's a very simple one. I'm not going to answer. That's the response you're going to get. But if you just did something very simple, I answer my emails twice a day. I have set times. People know that. I make sure that's out in the world when I'm doing a project with a group or whoever. I'm like, here's when I look at emails, these 2 times a day. And if you need something more immediate, depending on who I'm working with, it might be Slack or Teams or something else, right? But when you start to just be clear about, I don't work after 6 or I don't work after 5, when you just start to be really clear, that is your first step in the boundary world. But what I have found is that when I'm thinking, like, he was middle management that I had who was feeling which I think is really common, feeling really pulled, right? His supervisor wanted more, his subordinates wanted more, everybody wanted more of his time. And I think anyone listening knows what that feels like, that your time, everybody's looking for it. And he started to really do the things I was asking him to do. And the number one thing I have is a lot of scheduling. Scheduling is my favorite boundary. Jim Rohn, I'm sure, great, the wonderful Jim Rohn. He always said, run the day or the day runs you, right? Success is scheduled. And so even that, when you think about, I put boundaries on my time, and I'm very clear because I do not answer. That's the response if you go outside of that. But I schedule in when I'm doing things. And so I really got him to schedule more. We really talked more. He was always working on something, and he had 50 projects all kind of going. And I was like, stop working on things and finish things. So give yourself an hour to do whatever this thing is that you have to do, or a half hour, set a timer, do it. And then whatever's done is done, and then move it along to the next thing. When you even give yourself those personal boundaries, that's it. I'm going to end at this time with whatever this is. You're more productive. And anyway, we worked together for about 6 months, and just from scheduling and creating boundaries around his time like that, he started being a house of fire. He started being so productive. He was also just happier. He felt more in control of his day. I think that sort of took over too. But he got a very coveted position he'd been looking for about 2 years after about 6 months of us working together, where I was helping him speak more directly to a supervisor, having boundaries there, asking for what he needed. People are afraid if I set a boundary, I'll get fired. That's what I hear the most. And I have to tell you, that has not been my experience. I've been doing this 40 years. I've been very focused on boundaries for about 15 of those 40. I've yet to have someone fired for a boundary.
Not once.
Not once.
Out of hundreds, thousands, zero.
Literally thousands of people I've worked with. I have had people, I will say this, have a relationship with a boss get more contentious, right? Or a supervisor or a coworker get more contentious because of the boundaries. That'll happen for sure. Usually that resolves itself, but I've had a few instances where it doesn't. But what's happened is my client they've gotten to understand like, oh, I don't want to be at this job. I don't want to be somewhere where I can't have a boundary. Like, this isn't how I want to work anymore. And because I'm not productive in these environments, I don't feel happy. I'm not satisfied. And if, you know this better than anybody with all the work, with everybody you interview, if we're not satisfied at work, it's so much of our lives. What are we doing? So I've had people realize from setting boundaries that they had to leave their job. They had to start really seriously courting another position or getting out of the system they were in completely, which I also see as success. Because at the end of the day, you're still happier and more content.
Okay. Well, so let's really dig into this statement here. I am not responsible for whatever someone else does or thinks or says. And it feels like this, I mean, you're the boundary expert, but to me, this feels like the holy grail of boundaries. Because if I could really believe that and have that deep in my bones and to be true, such that I feel a sense of peace amidst whatever reacting rage or whatever someone else is putting out there, then it feels like I've won the whole game. That's my perception. Does that feel accurate, Abby?
It's 100% accurate. And I would say for every human, this is the hardest thing.
All right. So, well, sounds like we're on the same page. But we're gonna really drill into this a lot. So first, let's see. Let's not to play philosopher here, but let's push the boundaries of this definition a smidge. Let's just say I say something to you. This is just a role play. Let's say, Abby, you are botching this interview and it's terrible. So let's just say I say something kind of rude. It's not how I really feel, but so I say that. And then let's say you react sharply and maybe yell at me. And then I feel bad and I think, oh boy, Abby's really upset. I guess I probably shouldn't have said that to her. So I guess in a way here, I guess I am somewhat responsible for I'm reflecting on my own actions and saying, those comments I said were probably I probably didn't deliver those in the ideal manner. So I may feel some remorse or guilt or regret associated with my behavior, although your reaction is kind of what got me there.
It's not justified. No.
What's not justified?
It's not justified that I have a angry, upset reaction to you criticizing me, let's say, or what I consider criticism. This idea we all have that other people make me upset or drive me crazy or that is your choice all the time. I can sit in traffic with my husband, and because I'm from New York City and he's from upstate New York, we have very different ideas of what the traffic is. He gets upset. I don't. And it's not because of the traffic. We're sitting in the same car in the same traffic. It is because of my beliefs about the traffic. That's what's getting you upset. So that's the same thing. It doesn't matter what you say to me. You feel the way you think. And you are in charge of your thoughts, and you have to be in charge of your thoughts. And we know this is the basis of all therapy, is cognitive behavioral therapy, is that we change how you think to change how you feel. So a great reframe, we talk about cognitive reframing. My favorite quote probably ever that I say a lot to myself and others is, life is happening for me, not to me. And so if I thought that and you said that, I might think to myself, oh, I really should ask more questions before I get interviewed. Or maybe, oh my God, what if Pete's having a bad day? I wonder if he's okay. There's 100 things I could think or choose to do besides get mad at you and react. Always.
Yes. And likewise.
Yes. And likewise, the way you talk to me, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the point.
Right.
That's the point.
Well, and so I guess it's true that In this demonstration example, I had some beliefs, and I guess we'd have to do some real dive deep to see what they are.
Well, I could do a little psychological work with you there. Yeah.
In terms of like, oh, if people are upset with me, it means I've done something wrong. Maybe that's a belief. That doesn't quite sound right.
It's most people do. Like, that's what you think.
But but I've got a belief in the ballpark of that belief, I think, in terms of it's like, if someone is upset with me, there is a chance that I have done something wrong. And in some ways, this learning comes from, I guess, life experience in terms of often as children, we genuinely misbehave, break the rules, are naughty, according to some definition or standard or rubric, and then receive discipline or from teachers or coaches or parents or whomever. So then we have some learnings that suggest, in fact, if I'm being scolded or someone's upset with me, I may have done wrong. So if that's a big one inside us, how do we unpack it?
Yeah, but there's a lot of times when people are upset with us and we've done nothing wrong because that's the day they're having. And I would say that's always the case. And what the hell does wrong even mean? If I spill milk because I'm a kid, is that wrong? No, I'm learning how to pour milk. If I fall down when I'm learning to walk, is that wrong? No, I'm learning. So even that idea that we can decide what's right or wrong, I have issue with. So as we're older, really what people are afraid of is other people not liking me, other people rejecting or abandoning me. This is DNA getting thrown out of the clan stuff, for millions of years ago. And this conflict avoidance, I find, has become, and I think it's way worse since the pandemic. It's always been an issue, but it's a huge issue. This people pleasing, wanting others to like us, and thinking that being nice means not having boundaries and that it's mean to have boundaries. And that's the big lie, that wrong, faulty belief, faulty logic that people are working from. And we have to shift that.
Okay. And so I guess here I'm thinking about back to our scenario. I mean, I guess for me, since I am all about sort of learning growth and all that stuff and helping people and compassion, I think my quote unquote ideal response would be not so much an emotional one of guilt, shame, sadness, but rather a curious, introspective. I was like, boy, Abby really got upset there.
Yeah. What's that about?
Might I have communicated that differently or better? So I'm not blaming myself, but I'm taking that input as a prompt for reflection without the shame, blame, guilt, yuckiness. And I might conclude, okay, next time I'm going to deliver the feedback a little bit differently. And I think that'll serve both of us better. And that just feels like a healthy process that feels way less yucky, but we get to the same place.
And that's why I say boundaries are love and walls are fear. We block people, we cut them off when we're afraid. But boundaries really are, again, meant to keep people in. We're trying to create a relationship with them. So, but I would even say that self-reflection, like, oh, I could have said that better, or I could, even that, I would step back even further and sort of go, wow, Abby's having quite the reaction to that. I seem to have hit a nerve. Yes, I could look at myself for sure, be self-reflective, but I could also have compassion for Abby. Like, wow, I wonder what's going on there. Because again, I have a choice how I react to that information. So, wow, this is really a trigger for her. If you told me, I'm 5'9", so I'm relatively tall for, I guess, a female. And, if someone said, you're so short, what's wrong? You're so short, you should grow. If someone said something like that to me, of course, I'd be like, they're crazy. Like, I wouldn't react to it. I wouldn't be upset. But if someone is saying something to me that I think is true, that's when you get upset. If someone comments on something else, says, I'm old, maybe if they said, oh, she looks really old, I might be like, oh God, that hurt. Because it feels like something I'm aware of. And that's the thing to remember. It's always about us. If someone yelled something to me in Swahili, I don't know what it means. So I'm not getting upset because I don't know what they're saying. It's really not about the words coming at us. It is about what we understand of them, what we believe about them, what we don't believe. And that gauges our reaction to it. If I think I'm going to lose our relationship, if I think it's going to damage my reputation, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things at stake that make that up. But I don't know, you've been doing this a while. I get nasty comments under my YouTube videos sometimes, or to my podcast or something, right? And I'm really, thank God, the overwhelming is positive. I have that first initial like, oh God, I can't believe someone's complaining when I'm giving free information. They've got to be kidding me. Arr. I'll do that for a second. And then it's like, oh, this poor person, who are they that they're so mad that there was a commercial in the free, amazing content they were getting? Or that I talked in the beginning and I introduced people or whatever too long to them. I had to wait 2 minutes till you started to get into the, it's like, wow, this poor person, what are they doing? And I really do feel that. I think, oh, and I try to send a prayer. I never respond. And I just try to send a prayer to them. But that's a choice that I'm making all the time of how I'm viewing it. So it's not again. So people do say really nasty things to me sometimes, but and I'm maybe to you sometimes, but it's a choice about how we respond. It's always a choice, 100% of the time.
Yeah, that's really intriguing in terms of we could hear all kinds of things and some of them won't trigger us or fluster us in the least.
Right.
Like, Pete, I think your shirt is dumb. It's like,
yeah.
Okay, whatever.
Sure.
I don't
Exactly.
And yet there could be another context in which it's like, Pete, I am shocked that you didn't take the time to dress appropriately for this event. It seems like you don't care and you're not taking this seriously. This is a very unprofessional. And then I'd be more prone to take that personally because like, oh, well, I do care about this and I do care about that person and I do care about this event. But it just didn't occur to me that it was business casual. No one told me that.
But can I actually even to me, that wouldn't be wrong. Can I even give you to me, the boundary when someone's talking to me that way is I try to be curious and understand. I'm like, oh, what is it about when people aren't dressed the way you think that has you thinking they don't care? Because wow, I deeply care. And I have a different idea about how I dress, conveying how I care. I feel like the care is in my words and in my showing up and in my time. For me, what is it for you? Tell me more. What other ways do you not feel heard or seen? Or, what other ways do you feel like people don't care? I would really want to have a conversation about that. And that's a boundary I have that I want to lean in to conversations. So if you have somebody at work who's really upset with you, let's say or is acting nasty to you for some reason, you know how that can be, for no apparent reason. And it's incredible. And I've had people practice this. I'm telling you, it works, is to stop and say something. Go are we okay? But not angrily, with the compassion and the curiosity. Are we okay? You seem real mad at me. And I do it in meeting. I do it all the time. And I actually can think I'm working with a group of vice presidents right now. And the one guy does not like me. He just doesn't like me. Not everybody likes you. He doesn't like that I'm there. He thinks they're paying me way too much money. He thinks it's a waste of time. And he subtly tries to undermine sometimes. And so in the meeting, and again, not in a conference, I'm just I'm not sure what to do. It feels like there's a lot of anger coming towards me. I'm not sure how to make this work with how angry you are. And he started to say the first time I did it, he was like, I'm not angry, I'm just trying to make a point. And he, as people do sometimes. And I said, okay, well, how do you feel like we're connected right now? Do you really like what I'm saying? On a scale of 1 to 6, 1 to 6 is my favorite, by the way, for feedback, because there's no middle. They have to give you one side or the other. I said on a scale of 1 to 6, 6, I'm doing an amazing job. You're so happy to be here. You love what's going on. And 1, you think I suck and this meeting sucks. Where would you put it? And he hemmed and hawed for a while and I pushed and pushed. And finally he said, well, I guess a 2. And I said, oh, all right. So maybe I'm picking up on that 2 energy. Maybe you're not mad. Maybe I'm saying an emotion. What are you feeling? What is happening? How can we move forward? And you start being curious and asking questions and naming what's going on. And I'm telling you, when you have those kind of boundaries, I have a boundary that I don't allow the thing to go unsaid. I'm going to say the thing. If someone's mad or angry or passive aggressive, I'm going to address it. That's a boundary I have. I will not sit in the lie. To me, it's sitting in a lie. But I also am a kind, compassionate person. So I'm not going to be like, what the F is wrong with you? Why are you acting? Yeah, what's your problem, Bob?
What's your problem, dude? Stop being a jerk.
Exactly. And I always say, would you rather be correct or effective? Because you can't be both.
Yeah.
So if you want to be correct all day and call him a jerk, God bless and good luck with that. But I want to be effective. So I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to ask collaborative questions. Could you tell me more about, is probably my favorite question whenever we're dealing with just communication and boundaries and trying to get to what is. Could you tell me more about that? Like, what does that mean to you? Could you tell me more? And when people start to give you those answers, we start to connect. When we show an interest in where people are, instead of trying to drag them where we are, I go to where they are. I try to go in trying to learn something, not prove something, right? That old adage. So here I am in that meeting trying to learn something. I'm not trying to prove to Bob that he should like me and how we are. I'm trying to learn something like, how does Bob tick and sometimes Bob doesn't like that I'm female. I can't do much about that. Doesn't like maybe, I've had that. They don't like a woman telling them what to do. I'm Jewish and I'm very out about that. Some people hate Jews, it happens. And so there's not much there, but I can still try to figure out a way that there might be a way to connect. And sometimes there's not, but that's what I'm going to do, because no matter what he's doing, I'm not going to change my boundaries, that I'm a kind, compassionate person who's curious and asks questions. And that's the big mistake people make. If someone's mean to them, they slam the door and they change their boundary. And if someone's nice to them, then they collapse the boundary. You don't want to do that. You don't want to change your boundaries depending on what other people are doing.
I got you. And Abby, I'm curious. I think some listeners right now is like, wow, Abby's like a super woman, Wonder Woman. I want to be like her. Tell me, have you always been like this, or did you have any transformational aha moments that shifted you into this spot?
I think I've had many transformational aha moments. Some of it is just getting older. And I don't know, my 30-year-old self was trying to prove herself in businesses and with these executives and all that. I didn't feel the confidence I feel now, obviously, at 60. That's different. But there is a space. I mean, I think in some ways I'm lucky. I'm a recovering drug addict, which I talk about a lot. I'm a recovering heroin addict. And one of the things you learn as you're getting clean is that you got to start being honest. You have to start saying the thing. And what I found over time through my own therapy and coaching, I've done all the things. I've walked on hot coals with Anthony Robbins back in 1986. Yeah, I've done Est with Werner Erhard and LifeSpring. And yeah, I've done them all. And I was on a path to try to figure out how to be more authentic and how to speak the truth. And what I found is that I just really want to connect with people. When you're in counseling school, they teach you that every interaction should be therapeutic. Every interaction is a chance to be a therapeutic interaction. And that's how I like, even if I'm at the checkout line at the grocery store, that's how I like to think about it. This could be, I say hi, I make eye contact, I say, how's your day going? I connect. Because every time it's an opportunity to be authentically connected to people. And the more you practice it, the better you get. And the more you realize that you can tell people the truth from a loving heart. Again, you got to follow the rules. Do you want to be correct or effective? You're trying to learn something, not prove something, right? You have to go in curious. If you don't go in curious, people pick up. One of my favorite bits of research is from Timothy Wilson. It's in one of my favorite books called Strangers to Ourselves, but he's a very famous sociologist. Malcolm Gladwell loves him. So now he's been getting some good press through him. But one of the best pieces of research I ever read was his, and it's that our conscious brains process information at a rate of 40 bits per second, while our subconscious brains, or what we psychologists call your unconscious, our unconscious brains process information at a rate of 11 million bits per second. So people don't hear what you say, they hear what you mean. So if I'm in that meeting and I know that Bob hates me and I'm not saying anything and I'm just getting frustrated and irritated, even if all my language is, well, Bob, please, I'd really love to hear what you have to say. And I'm doing that, Bob knows I'm full of crap. Just like every single person listening knows that someone has said something to them at work and they were saying all the right things. And in your head, you're like, this person is full of it. I don't believe a thing they're saying. And you can't say why, you just know it's the 11 million bits. So that is always at work. And I know it's always at work. So I am working hard to align that 40 and that 11. That's what I'm doing.
Yeah. And so then you're just saying it's like, hey, Bob, you seem really angry about this. What's going on?
What's going on? What is it? Are you okay? Are you afraid of change? Like, let's talk about it. Are you worried about losing your job? Like, what's the fear? Let's get there so we can talk about that for real. And I will tell you, people start to say it. Oh, well, people like you have come in before. And next thing I know, Jane gets fired. And it's like, oh, they'll tell you. When you start asking, people will tell you, not directly, but they'll tell you. And then we can talk about that. It's like, oh, do you feel like some firing is going to happen? Is that what you're thinking I'm here for, maybe? And people will get real. They'll say, well, what else are you doing? Do you want to ask me some questions about what I'm doing? Maybe I haven't been clear up front. Or maybe I was clear, but your fears overrode the clarity. So let's do it again.
That's cool.
What do you need to hear from me to feel better? What could I say? One of my favorite questions to ask is, if there's one thing I could say to you right now that would help you have faith in this process, what would it be? And I'm like, if I was going to give you $1 million, Bob, I know you're like, I don't know. I'm like, no, I was going to give you $1 million. Come on, what would it be? Could anyone else here tell me, if you were to have more faith in this process, what would it be? That's a conversation you want to have. That's team building. That's coming together. That's connection.
Well, so Abby, what I love is that like fundamentally this takes a grounding of courage, belief, self-confidence, because I mean, you probably hear about some hardcore stuff like that you won't take a penny of fees from us until you deliver all the promised results. You'll probably hear some hardcore stuff and you're ready for it. So tell me, when it comes to beliefs, let's say we've zeroed in on some beliefs associated with I need to please people. If people don't like me, there's something wrong with me. I'm going to be rejected. So let's say we've zeroed in on a belief. We know it's there. Now what?
Now you do some therapy. No, I was kidding. So now your job is to practice it. So you have self-awareness. I speak a lot on my podcast and on my website. I have a lot of free stuff about this, about being more mindful. And when I started doing mindfulness, we called it attention training. It's learning to train your attention. When you're mindful and in a moment, you can notice what you're doing and what's happening. So that's the first thing, is you have to get more mindful and be in your moment. You have to practice that more. So you can do something simple like setting a reminder on your phone for 3 times a day and when it goes off, anytime you want, 9 a.m., 2 in the afternoon, and 8 at night. I don't care. And when it goes off, all you do is just check in and notice how you were feeling. So, and good and fine are not feelings. Okay is not a feeling. It's like to truly identify, people kind of suck at how they feel. So to really think like, oh, yeah, I'm in the meeting. I'm a little anxious. I kind of want to say something, but I'm afraid people will laugh or whatever. You'll start to notice what your thoughts and feelings are. This is step 1. And by the way, mindfulness is different than self-awareness. Self-awareness is judgmental. Like I'm very controlling. I'm very self-aware of that. And so I judge that, right? I don't want to be as controlling. Mindfulness is noticing what you're thinking or doing in a moment without judgment, with no judgment. That's the difference. And so I'm self-aware that I'm controlling, but sometimes I'm not mindful that I'm doing it. Does that make sense? I just want to be clear. Like I hear a lot of people say, oh, I'm very self-aware. It's like, nah, you're mixing them up. And by the way, Tasha Eurich, has done a lot of research on self-awareness. Something like 85% of people say they're self-aware, but her number from her research is 10 to 15% are actually self-aware. So just for the record, like people think they are and they're not. But beyond that, I would say start with mindfulness so that you can notice that I'm going into a meeting with Bob and I know he doesn't like me and I'm knowing that I'm going to react to that. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm noticing I'm feeling anxious about going to the meeting because then I could use some tools to calm my nervous system around that. It's okay. Bob's not scary. Bob might not like what I say. I'm okay. Life is happening for me, not to me. Whatever's happening, as long as I'm coming from a true heart, then it's going to be okay. Everything is figure outable. Everything works out. Whatever your mantra is, I don't care what it is, but have something there that helps to calm you, whatever that is. For me, it's doing some deep breaths, getting my vagus nerve activated and I have to do that before I go to meetings with these guys. I'm usually in a room with a bunch of men and there's a lot of agitation and I'm often called in because someone's not doing the right thing. So they're feeling very defensive. It's often a hot room to walk into. And I'm not immune from people being upset. So I have to take a moment and be like, I'm here for their greater good. I'm here for the company's greater good. I'm here for my greater good, to connect, to learn, to be better at what I do, to inspire, to motivate. I'm here and I'm going to be fully present. That's what I'm going to bring. When you go in with your I call it your calibration, with your energy intact, that's the point of bringing other people towards you instead of you calibrating to them. I hear that a lot. I'll hear like, well, I was in a good mood and then I got to work and my boss was miserable. So then I was miserable. He was making me miserable. I'm like, oh, no. First of all, why do we always assume the bad mood wins? Where is that from? Why does the bad mood win? Why doesn't your good, huge, amazing, inspired mood win? Because it can. But you have to decide about that. You have to go in with that intact. So when I'm walking in that meeting, I'm intact. And sometimes I just say something right away. I'll just lead the meeting maybe. And I encourage everyone who has to sit in a meeting to take a minute right before and just ask everybody, like, can we all say what our intention is for this meeting? So sometimes that person who talks too much maybe can say, hey, well, my intention is to listen more. My supervisor's been telling me I should listen more. So, all right, my intention is to listen more. My intention is that everyone feels heard and leaves this room feeling like they got seen or something, whatever it is. I don't care. But when you do that, it brings the energy into the room and it's very present focused as opposed to outside the room. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And just doing that will help you do this thing where you can talk to people honestly because you're starting honest. You're starting with everybody leaning in.
Understood. Well, Abby, we're having a lot of fun, covering a lot of stuff. Tell me, anything else you really want to make sure to mention before we hear about your favorite things?
I would say don't waffle on your boundaries ever. Make sure that you say the same thing over and over. If you say no to somebody, don't justify, don't explain. I'm sure people have heard no is a complete sentence. So when you start to justify or explain, you get into trouble because people will start to have something to push back against. And you just say no and make that, if they ask again, say the exact same thing again. Yeah, I can't come to the meeting on Friday. Well, why not? What's more important? What are you doing? Like I said, I can't come on Friday. Well, what are you doing? Like I said, I can't come on Friday. Do you see that? Same over and over and over, like a mantra. Don't get into it. I'm just letting you know, I can't come on Friday. Don't get mad. Don't get upset. Don't take it personally, but use that as a thing over and over. So that's, I think, what I really want people to hear.
Big thanks to Abby for sharing her wisdom with us. And big thanks to our sponsors. Check them out. One sponsor to check out is Ginny Kane, who will help you step into summer with style and ease. Ginny Kane is a California clothing brand with delightful staples that make getting dressed effortless and delightful. They offer minimalist and refined pieces such as luxurious cashmere sweaters. My own Ginny Kane cashmere hoodie is already a contender for my number one favorite clothing item of all time. It is the perfect answer to every time the office AC gets cranked a little too high. It's warm and cozy and yet somehow still looks super sharp, beautiful, and professional. Ginny Kane has everything you need to embrace your uniform. And for a limited time, Ginny Kane is offering our listeners 15% off of your first order. Go to jennykane.com and use the code AWESOME15 to get that 15% off. That's spelled Jenny, Jenni, Kane, KAYNE.com/awesome15 to get that 15% off. All right. Well, now could you share with us a favorite book?
Well, I named my son Max after Maxwell Maltz. So Psycho-Cybernetics is the book that definitely changed my life.
And a favorite tool, something you use to be awesome at your job?
It's the scheduling. I don't have to-do lists and I put everything in a schedule. Everything. Phone calls, everything I'm doing goes in a schedule. And that has changed my life and the lives of all the people I work with. And by the way, it's especially good for people with ADHD. I do work with a large company here with their employees who have ADHD, and scheduling and not having to-do lists and not having stickies is the way to go.
All right. And is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks? They quote it back to you often?
Don't SAC in your relationships. Don't SAC. Don't offer suggestions, give advice, or criticize. Instead, be curious and ask questions.
Okay.
So try to get through a whole conversation without making a statement and just asking questions to really deepen a conversation. It's a game changer.
All right. And if folks want to learn more or get in touch, where would you point them?
Just to my website, abbymedcalf.com. Everything is there, and social and all my things. Everything is there. And I'm sure you'll link to it in the show notes. So.
Oh, yes. And you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Yeah, I really want you to have a morning practice where before you look at your phone, before you do anything else, before you touch a piece of electronics, that you have some, even if it's 2 minutes, some practice where you start with yourself, where you come first, not what everybody else wants, but what you need. So anything that fills that space. But 15 minutes is my goal with all my clients, but I will take 2 minutes to start, where you just stop, you take a breath, you set intention, you start with that. And then maybe you move into meditations or visualizations or journaling or whatever else, or prayer. I don't care, but start with something that puts you first and keeps that momentum in a positive place right from the get-go.
All right, Abby, thank you. This is lovely. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was great being here.
Wow. I've been thinking about that statement many times since my conversation with Abby, probably dozens of times. I am not responsible for whatever someone else does or thinks or says. And that really is the Holy Grail. And Abby says, for everybody, it's the hardest thing. And that's really been ringing true for me in terms of it feels at times like that's not true, and yet it totally is. And I've had some experiences recently where I talked to somebody about how we received a message. Like, oh, when I heard that, I was kind of irritated because I thought it meant blah, 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 blah. And then someone else said, oh, no, I sort of took it totally differently to rather mean something positive like this. Or at times, you step into a space and someone is already just really angry or sad, and they speak to you with anger or sadness, and it has nothing to do with you, or vice versa. I'm the one who's angry and sad. Someone just shows up in my midst and they get anger or sadness, and it's not about them at all. So it really is true that if someone is angry or speaks to us in an angry way, that does not necessarily mean we've done something wrong, nor does it mean there's a high probability that we've done something quote unquote wrong, because people can receive messages differently. And sometimes people just have their emotions that are existing regardless of how we're impacting the situation, and we just sort of show up in their midst. So I think all that's to say, the more I reflect upon this and try to unpack it and distinguish it and apply it to examples in my world, the more I'm seeing its fundamental strength and truth, and the more I'm finding layers of freedom. So that's just my stuff. Maybe some of you are like, duh, Pete, been there, done that, learned that, got the souvenir. And in which case, I hope this was a good review for you and a reminder that other people are still working and processing through this. And if this is something that's kind of hitting you and you're wrestling with it, I encourage you to continue wrestling with it, because wow, there's power and there is freedom when this gets deep into your bones. And I'm feeling it real time. So thank you, Abby. That's powerful stuff. I hope it has enhanced and enriched you the way it has me. If you want to check out the show notes or the transcript with links to items that we've referenced, please find those goodies at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP985. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.